Small businesses are at the heart of the U.S. economy. Here at Nurture Small Business Podcast, we're dedicated to seeing our small business owners succeed. I am your host, Denise Kagan, president of DCA Virtual Business Support. If you like what you hear on today's podcast, please share it. You have my gratitude for doing so. Hello and welcome to today's show. Today is another solo podcast. This is Denise's Opinions. It is not legal advice, HR advice, financial advice, or any other advice that is regulated under law. It is just my opinions. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about salary and some of the legislation that's come through in the past few months about pay transparency. Why are we talking about this? So as the trends have occurred since the pandemic, there are more remote, hybrid, and work from home opportunities, not to mention that even companies with brick and mortar often employ across state lines. As this becomes more prevalent, it's important that employers recognize the challenge in ensuring that they're compliant with multiple states. So if you are in a state or you employ in another state or you advertise for employment in that state, I know when I lived in Charlotte is very close to the South Carolina border. And so oftentimes we would see candidates from South Carolina apply for our positions when we were doing local. So that's not uncommon. So you need to understand what your neighboring states are, or any states where you are actually accepting applications and putting your job advertisements out. How do we do this? Okay, so let's go a little bit into, before we get into how we do this, let's talk a little bit about some of the research that I found. As I was researching for the show, I found 3 sites that listed the states, okay? The interesting thing, and they were all from 2023, so it was really recent. The interesting thing is that all 3 states had listed different numbers of states. One had 8, one had 9, and one had 10. So making sure if you're looking it up on the internet, of course, making sure that you have really good resource to get your base information. That doesn't replace an attorney or an HR consultant, okay? But it's a good place to start getting some of your information and making sure you're coming from a reputable source. So I'll make sure that the link for the most comprehensive one I had is in there, keeping in mind that there's no guarantee that that website is going to update the laws if the laws change. So with that said, again, as I was looking through the states, some of the states were very specific in how they presented the laws. And I am going to reference back to the website so that I can tell you a little bit more about this. So in some of them, you would see things such as for employers with X amount of employees or more. Most of them were saying, the smallest amount I was seeing was 5. But there, you have to read through the laws because they all read very differently by state. In some states, New York and Ohio in particular, they were specific to cities and regions, okay? So it was not the entire state that was covered by the law. Does the entire state have a law? It might. I don't know. If you advertise statewide, which my company often does, you need to be very aware of that parameter and make sure that you're meeting it. And we do hire in Ohio. So making sure that you are aware of all those things. And then you've got some of the other states. You had Washington State, Rhode Island. As I mentioned, New York and Ohio had specific regions. New Jersey, as a matter of fact, did as well. It was specific to Jersey City, Nevada, Maryland, Connecticut, and Colorado. So those are the states that I'm seeing on this list. But I want to point out the fact that even though there's only 10 states listed at the moment, you should consider this the new normal, okay? We cannot do business the way we did in the past, where pay was reserved to talk about just during the confidential employee evaluation between the manager and the employee. That's not how pay works anymore. People want to know. They have the right to know. And we as managers and leaders need to be prepared to have these conversations, as well as be prepared to meet the laws in the places in which we do business, which in some states, that is also considered where we have employees or where we advertise for employees. So some of the things that you can do as a business leader and a manager: first, know your compensation practices, all right? It starts there. You may have some things that have lingered from the past that you might need to get rid of. and they might not be compliant with the current laws. Seek legal advice, seek an HR consultant to work it all out and figure out what the best practices are if you feel like your practices are not currently compliant. And then the other thing, of course, is to know the laws. And again, HR consultant and a legal professional, those are your best sources. By all means, use the internet. It's a great source of information. It is not the be all end all. It is a good place to get some basic information. You can also go to your own city and state government sites to see if you can find information there. The statutes for most should be public. Review your employee handbook. Is there any language in there that might be contradictory towards these new laws and how these new laws are worded? Make sure that you take all of that out. There's a lot of great HR companies that will review your handbook for you, make sure that it's worded appropriately and compliant for the states that you're in. I can give you resources to those, refer you to those companies. We have some great partnerships with some of them. So by all means, engage with an HR company. And the last part is really about communication. Expect to have those conversations with your employees in a group and one-on-one. That's right. People should be able to feel comfortable talking about their compensation in groups, okay? Know what to say based on the first two things I said. What are your compensation practices and what are the laws in the state? Keep it factual, keep it fair. Be prepared to tell them, this job classification has a pay rate of this to this. That should be common knowledge within your company. And it's completely fair to say, you don't know an answer to something if you actually don't know the answer. Let your employees know, you'll find it out and you'll get back to them and then actually do that. Get together with your HR consultant, your HR personnel, and find out the answer to their questions. Don't leave those questions unanswered. That is definitely not the thing that you want to do. So, in summary, today, knowing your laws in your state and the states you are hiring in are extraordinarily important when it comes to this Pay Transparency Act. A lot of the things I'm seeing on those specifications, and again, I'll leave the link to the webpage where I found the most states in our show notes, but most of the things I was seeing were talking about salary ranges and compensations and just making sure that those are available on the posts that you're putting out there. Thank you for stopping in with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's Denise's Opinions. Thank you for joining me for today's Nurture Small Business podcast, where the focus is on business growth through technology, leadership, and people strategies. Do you have an idea for a podcast or feedback you'd like to share with me? Send me a note through my website at dcavirtual.com/contact.